agree. I think that nearly every decision that the Biden administration and that Congress made on the economy was wrong. They spent trillions of dollars. They overcooked the economy. They printed too much money. They had terrible energy policies. And I think people felt that pain. And I think that's a lot of reason that they went into the ballot box feeling that particular pain. And yes, Americans for Prosperity has been fighting against those policies. And now it's an opportunity to turn the page and fight for policies that lead to growth. And to your point, like addressing wasteful spending, addressing our tax cuts, extending the TCJA, addressing energy policies and removing some of Biden's bad executive orders on energy are the right steps to take as we try to get our economy back on track and let people thrive and realize their version of the American dream. It's so important to have economic freedom in order to have true freedom.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Hey everyone, my name is David Fromm and I'm the new host of American Potential Podcast. The reason the podcast is a new host is because Jeff Crank decided to run for Congress, and he won, and is now representing the people of Colorado's 5th Congressional District. So one issue Jeff and the new Congress must address is the expiration of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that will expire at the end of the year. If these tax cuts are allowed to expire, businesses and Americans will have to pay more in taxes, leaving less money in their wallet. Americans for Prosperity is launching a new campaign called Protect Prosperity, and it will focus on sharing stories to lawmakers for businesses and individuals who have been positively impacted by the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. After it was passed, some businesses were able to give bonuses, increased wages, and expand, and so much more. However, if Congress fails to renew the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, it will cost families a minimum of $1,500 per year or more. So how does Americans for Prosperity plan to spread the word about the positive impact of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? Well, I want to welcome today's guest, Ken Strang, who is the Managing Director for Americans for Prosperity, to talk about this new campaign. Kent, welcome.
Hey, David.
Hey.
Thanks for having me. Congratulations on the new gig. Host extraordinaire. How's it feel?
It's great. I mean, it's the team here has been wonderful. They've done such a wonderful job. When Jeff Crank was doing it, I realized that they basically propped up Jeff, and basically it's mine to run into the ditch if I don't do a good job. So it's been thrilling. We've done a number of episodes right out of the gate, and it's been a lot of fun because honestly, there's so many cool stories and cool people to talk to. And so many people are doing cool things. And, with the new administration coming in, a new Congress, there's a lot of important stuff to talk about. So we're really, really excited.
That's great.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. So AFP, we launched a new campaign, have announced it, and so called Protect Prosperity. So tell us about it.
Yeah, you're right. A brand new campaign called Protect Prosperity. And the goal is really simple. And you said it in your intro. The goal is to improve and extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which most of our listeners probably refer to as the Trump tax cuts. And if Congress doesn't address this, Americans are going to be saddled with a tax increase. And coming out of 4 years of failed economic policies of Bidenomics, it's really important that Americans for Prosperity sends a strong message to Congress that it's time to, pass pro-growth tax reform so Americans can not just get by, but thrive.
Well, so specifically, what are we trying to accomplish with this campaign? How are we targeting it? And what do we want? What kind of outcomes do we want to come?
Absolutely. Well, one, we want to pass the bill. We want to pass a pro-growth tax reform bill. But more importantly, we want to deliver pro-growth tax reform. And so this campaign is really AFP bread and butter. You and I have worked at Americans for Prosperity for a long time, and taxes and spending and growth are always in the wheelhouse of Americans for Prosperity. What I'm really excited about this campaign to do is, one, we were a big part of passing the Trump tax cuts in 2017 alongside President Trump. And then now that they're up for renewal, we are the first conservative organization to launch a major campaign in support of that agenda. And we're going to bring what we bring to bear. First and foremost, we've already done over 300 events on the Hill We're scheduled to do 1,000 of them this year with our team, not only in the States, but in Washington, D.C. We have a marketing campaign that is going to drive the nationwide narrative that pro-growth tax reform is good for Americans and good for businesses to reinvest in their companies. That's going to go to, again, all 50 states. People are going to see it, drive pressure or support among lawmakers. And then our superpower is grassroots. Our grassroots teams are already today lining up to do thousands of events across the country, to knock on doors in key districts, to let lawmakers know that their constituents want them to pass a pro-growth tax bill, to make tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of phone calls directly into congressional offices, to have meetings, to talk to businesses, to share their stories. And so this is an AFP through and through bread and butter campaign to encourage lawmakers to do the right thing by taxpayers.
Yeah, one of the things I've always loved about working for Americans for Prosperity is we do harness that grassroots voice, and yet we have a lot of staff and other people who we can leverage in the Capitol. So I always like to think of it as lawmakers can't really hide. They'll be in the Capitol. If people lobby, come to their offices, bring constituents to their office. Get the calls, get the mail, and then they go back to their district and people meet with them there, or people are knocking on doors or holding events talking about what they should do the right thing when they're back at the Capitol. And I think that makes for a pretty effective approach, hopefully. And I'm super excited to see how this unrolls. It's such an important issue.
That's uniquely us. A lot of groups can run ads, and there are a lot of great groups. A lot of groups can lobby on the Hill. And I think one thing that makes us different is our ability not only to have that pressure on the Hill with our government affairs team, but again, at home in those districts, to have one-on-one conversations with constituents, one-on-one conversations with lawmakers. It's what makes us unique. It's what makes us different. And we think that that's the edge that we can contribute in this effort with a lot of other great groups to push us across the finish line and deliver tax cuts for folks.
Well, what do you think are the key benefits from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and what impact did it have on the economy?
Sure. Well, let's look at the last 4 years. Under Bidenomics, the last 4 years, the average American family is paying $11,400 more just to maintain their lifestyle. Folks are dealing with record high gas prices, higher energy prices. Everything is more expensive. And one benefit of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was that delivered a tax break for people. Again, the average family saved $1,500. In some states, it was much more. In Nevada, the average Nevadan saved $3,023 thanks to this legislation. And so it delivers, it maintains and keeps immediately relief for family, because if it is not extended in 2025, it's a tax increase. And that's the last thing that Americans need right now. The other side of that is the business component. There are a lot of provisions in this bill that allow businesses to reinvest in their companies, to get bigger, with depreciation scales. And we talked to Dan in Wisconsin, and he owns a bookstore. And he told us that, and I quote, "We'd be out of business if it wasn't for the TCJA." He had 3 staff. He expanded to 12. And he said, it offers us the ability to long-term plan, to understand our business, to look at those scales and to invest back into it. And we're not talking about every mega company. We're talking about bookstores and coffee owners and small businesses. And those are the heartbeat of our country, and especially of our communities.
Yeah, so often people like to characterize tax cuts like this when they'd say, "Oh, it's for the wealthy" or something like that. And
right.
So, first of all, it's been so helpful to just everyday Americans. Letting people keep more of their money just makes sense. And we've seen we've done some other episodes on Doge, and we wish there wasn't a need for Doge.
Right.
We need it because we need government efficiency. We need to stop wasteful spending. And, because they're spending the taxpayers' dollars, and we pay too much to the government at all levels in taxes. And this type of legislation and reauthorizing it and making it in effect again is going to be helpful in letting people hold on to more of their own money. But beyond that, you have small businesses that often, get characterized as the wealthy or something, but they're employing people. They're trying to, the amount of money they pay in taxes is the difference between them being in business and employing people or shutting their doors. And I think that's why this fight's so consequential.
That's right. The businesses are over, and that's going to be a major part of this campaign, is sharing that voice of small businesses by doing small business roundtables and storytelling and talking directly to business owners and how they thrived because of this bill. We talked to Vicky in North Carolina. She owns a coffee shop and she's a grandmother of 10. And so you can imagine if she's the only employee of her coffee shop, she'd like to spend some time with those grandchildren, but she was the only employee. She told us that after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed, she hired her first ever employee because it frees her up. It allows her again to grow her business, look at different ways, optimize her time. And those stories are we're going to leverage those stories through not only the American Potential podcast, I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but also through ads and through lots of different mechanisms so people can hear, to your point, that this doesn't just impact one group of people. This impacts Americans from sea to shining sea.
So I think there's a really interesting contrast here because, we've just gone through 4 years of the Biden administration and Bidenomics. AFP was at the forefront of highlighting the pain that was causing everyday families and Americans. We owned Bidenomics.com to help show people that. We had a number of different efforts that were featured here on the podcast to talk about, how we brought awareness to some of those things. And it seems like the American people made a decision in, November this past year to say, like, hey, this is hurting too much. Inflation's hurting our family finances. We can't make ends meet. Businesses can't stay open. And then they made a different choice. I really see that moving ahead with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is the first step and an important step to righting the ship and righting the economy so that it's going to work for people. What do you think about that, looking back on the last 4 years to like what we can look forward to?
I agree. I think that nearly every decision that the Biden administration and that Congress made on the economy was wrong. They spent trillions of dollars. They overcooked the economy. They printed too much money. They had terrible energy policies. And I think people felt that pain. And I think that's a lot of reason that they went into the ballot box feeling that particular pain. And yes, Americans for Prosperity has been fighting against those policies. And now it's an opportunity to turn the page and fight for policies that lead to growth. And to your point, like addressing wasteful spending, addressing our tax cuts, extending the TCJA, addressing energy policies and removing some of Biden's bad executive orders on energy are the right steps to take as we try to get our economy back on track and let people thrive and realize their version of the American dream. It's so important to have economic freedom in order to have true freedom.
Yes. I'm excited, being a longtime member, employee of Americans for Prosperity. I'm really excited to watch our teams work with our activists to try to spread this message, to influence their lawmakers. We do it in a lot of different ways, and our teams are always really innovative and come up with cool and interesting things. Are there any things that you're most excited about to see as we enter this new year, to see how how we try to push this message?
Sure. Our grassroots teams are creative and innovative. And just today in Arkansas, our team is doing an event at a grocery store. And what we've traditionally done with the grocery store is to give them an inflation adjusted discount on their groceries. But this one was a little unique as we move into tax reform, and they got grab bags of $30 groceries so folks could have a great meal. And they did $1,500 total worth. So $30 was 150 bags of groceries to help people out, to kind of show people, this is what $1,500 can buy you. Now that purchasing power isn't as good as what it used to be, thanks to Joe Biden, but it does go a long way of, that extra $1,500 in the pockets of Americans. You never know what benefit that brings you, or if you have an emergency situation, how that helps you, or something goes wrong on your car. And we want to make it as easy for Americans to keep as much of their money as they can, and not have the government go and spend it on them.
Yeah, I mean, Ken, people have been beat down over the last 4 years. Even before that, the people that struggle to make ends meet. I mean, the dollar doesn't go nearly as far as it used to. And right. You and I have done gas station events together, where we lower the price of gas to certain amount. At the time, it was maybe how much it was when Joe Biden came to office. And, it depending on your car, I mean, it can be a fair amount of money. But I mean, the reaction of people who would come to those events, the fact that they could save $20 on the price of gas to fill up their tank, or, maybe even less, and to see their reaction was always like really tugged at my heart, because, we were doing it to spread the message, hopefully give people a little relief. But to some of these folks, it was just so meaningful.
That's right. There were a lot of stories that tugged at me, and wish that I could do more. And I think and people are certainly feeling that. And I think one interesting thing about this campaign is hopefully, again, we get to flip that narrative now, and talk to people about how this helps them, how this benefits them, how it leads to more jobs, how it leads to innovation in their companies. We were talking to George from Texas, and he's a veteran and a brewer, and talking about just the reinvestment in machinery that leads to growth of the business, that leads to more employees, that leads to more beer being consumed and made. I mean, those are all good things. And so as much as I feel for the people that we met over the last 2 years at grocery stores and gas stations, and the pain that they're feeling under Bidenomics, I think we can get back to Shining City on the Hill here and start talking about how the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the provisions in it grow companies, how they grow economies, how they grow more people working in the labor force, and more people get to contribute. And again, all that leads to the American dream and for us to thrive, rather than all the pain that we felt over the last 4 years. I'm really looking forward to that, because I think that there's so many stories to tell. I've named just a handful today, but there are probably going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of those stories that we collect along the way that we can share and connect people to the need of this, and that it's not just to advance one provision or two provisions, but like small businesses across the country need this type of reform.
They absolutely do. I've always felt fortunate, and like it was almost a privilege for Americans for Prosperity to take those stories and those voices and raise them up. Because so often people don't feel like their voice is heard. And I feel like we can sometimes give them a platform so that that legislator or that media outlet or other people hear their story, and it helps kind of characterize why this is important and why we're fighting for it. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that over these, this next year. It's going to be a great experience. Ken, I know that this will be a changing landscape, legislatively. Initially, like, who are we kind of looking at trying to send this message to across the country and then in Washington?
Well, let me go to the storytelling for just a minute. Let me rewind just a second, because Americans do have a voice. And I think that that's something that we do really well, is we offer that voice. And so if you're listening to this show and you want your voice to be heard, there are a bunch of ways that you can do it right now. One is shoot a video, send a tweet, send a text, send a letter to your member of Congress, and let them know how important it is for them to pass pro-growth tax reform or extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And you can do that very simply, or you can pick up the phone and you can just leave a message. Normally, they don't even pick up the phone, and you can just leave that message for them and let them know that. Match up with one of our teams and our field offices and connect with. They're going to have so many unique ways that people can get involved, but your voice does matter. And that's absolutely going to be necessary for us to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Is folks from, whether it's from Florida to Alaska or from California to Maine, for them to share their voice and get loud, that this is something that has to have. And I know that that can be intimidating for activists or people who maybe have never done anything political other than vote in their entire life. But I'm telling you that they keep track of that, and we can help you elevate your voice, or you can elevate your voice on your own. But let's get loud about how important it is to do this. But yes, David, there are certainly going to be, in an ever-changing landscape, different members who might want a certain what they call offset, or a certain provision that they want to put in the bill, and with very narrow margins, both in the House of Representatives and in the United States Senate. That always has a little bit of a danger that this thing could get derailed. And that's why we want to make our message really clear that it's important to extend the benefits of this and failure to do so by the House of Representatives and the Senate means tax hikes. And so that process will evolve. But for right now, yeah, like let every member in Congress know that if we don't pass pro-growth tax reform, it's going to lead to tax hikes. It's going to lead to more pain that we've dealt with for the last 4 years. And we certainly don't want that.
Yeah, that's the last thing we want. You mentioned members of Congress and making your voice heard to them. I mean, as you know, I've worked for a few members of Congress way back in the day, before we had computers. I'm just kidding. That's not totally true. But I can tell you from experience that when constituents are calling them, or sending in emails or sending in letters or however they're, nowadays, tagging on social media, they have dog ears for that. They are listening. And we used to keep a tally. Literally, the receptionist had a tally sheet where for every call that we got on different topics, and we'd have reports, and the member of Congress would receive that report. Some are more responsive than others, but a lot of them also, there's a lot of members of Congress, I don't always want to feed into the cynicism. There's a lot of members of Congress, like Congressman Jeff Crank now, former host of American Potential Podcast, who are really, they're there to do the right things. And they want to do right by their constituents, and they want to do the right things for their constituents, their communities, and their country. But there's others also who are just very self-interested. And the nice thing about our system of government is that we elect members of Congress. And if they feel like they're going against the will of their constituents, and they're at a step for that, and that can endanger their job in the future, you better bet that they're going to be responsive to that. But we have to give them something to be responsive to. And that's why, if you're listening to this, you can go on your member's website and click and send an email to them, or call that number, leave a message. You probably don't even have to talk to anybody, or tag them on social media. And, I think that it's so important to get involved and make your voice heard. And this is one of those times you really need to do that, because this is the new administration's a huge priority for them. It's a huge priority for Americans' prosperity, because it's a huge priority for getting the country back in the right shape economically and putting families on a better footing economically.
That's right. We want to walk with as many members as we can. And where we're aligned, we want to partner with them. We're planning on doing a number of events with them. They're already lined up to do that. There are others that we're going to have to hold accountable if they choose not to do this. And so it's going to take both. And so we're going to make sure that we're partnering with as many members who want to do the right thing as possible, and leveraging our unique gifts and grassroots talents to hold them accountable to do the right thing here.
Ken, is there any other way for folks to learn more about Protect Prosperity efforts?
Absolutely. Go to protectprosperity.com. That's the brand new website. You can visit us at americansforprosperity.org, the normal website, and find us. But definitely find us on all of our social media platforms. Like, follow, find a way to get involved. And certainly, if you're out there in the States, reach out to your state chapter. Get involved with our field teams. Our field teams are the best in the business. They're the best people on earth. The offices are fun. It's a great experience. And so if you've ever felt like I've been on the sideline, hey, it's a new year, time for a New Year's resolution, make that call, walk into that office, because there's such an amazing sense of community in our field offices across the country, of people who are united in wanting to improve and reignite the American dream. And it's an unbelievable community. If you believe in the issues that we believe in, and you want to get involved, definitely take all those online actions and go to the website. But if you can, step inside one of those field offices and meet with our grassroots teams, because they're so passionate about advancing freedom and liberty, and it's just a great place to be.
That's man after my own heart, Ken Strang. You really are. I love it. Ken, those of you who have seen Kent on here a number of times, you may not know, but Ken at his core is a grassroots animal and has a long history of just doing great grassroots work, even in his own community. And I get to see it up close. He made a real difference in his own community, and now he's doing it nationally. So, Ken, I really appreciate you being with us and talking about the Protect Prosperity effort. It's going to be hopefully a raging success for all of Americans.
Thanks, David. You're the best. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Well, something that Kent agrees with, I can promise you, is that, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend liberty and freedom. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.